Good evening, and thank you for coming at such an absolute short notice. This session is completely unplanned. Ideally, I'm supposed to take a session on the coming Saturday, 12 noon, and जितने लोग दिल्ली में आके मिलो. ये session इसलिए हो रहा है because a few things happened early morning today. In fact, a day ago, I started getting some of your essay papers, some of the essays which people who think are going to write make it to the mains this year they attempted, and they knew that something or the other is broken in their attempt. But it's sometimes difficult to pin it out. See, big things are easy to pin out. If you did not get the topic of the essay and you started writing about it, 100 words later, you'll always fall flat on the face. It's easy to figure it out. But if you understood the topic, if it's from a PYQ that you've done better, and somehow you're finding that you're getting digressed, or you feeling that you're slurring on the paper, as it were, or you're writing same things and going in circles, that's when you realize that your arguments maybe are shallow, and that's impacting on your written skills. That being said, I checked the paper and I did a simple poll on the Letter and Spirit community. By the way, how many of you are here from Letter and Spirit? Just give a yes. I'll just wait for 1 second. How many of you have come from my Telegram group? Just a yes would do. And the crucial thing is, the only observation worth noticing is this. A lot of students have a lot of clarity, but yet they're not able to execute on the paper. Okay, and one of the obvious reasons is that they think so much, they think through the problem so much that there's a dopamine kick which you get just because you've thought it through. You've thought it through, you visualize how it's going to happen, how you're going to write the answer, what are you going to write as intro, body, conclusion, subpoints, whatever, thesis, antithesis, synthesis, if it comes to essay. But the moment, and so you give up, you do not practice writing. And sadly, yaar, UPSC exam is different from JEE or let's say NEET. Those exams, especially JEE or engineering exams, are still rocket science exams, right? If you think through something, then it's just a matter of working through the numerical or the equation. But in UPSC, you have to write, maintain the same consistency of thought, maintain the flow, have the right bridge lines between paragraphs, so that whatever you've thought in your head gets put down on the paper in the next, whatever, 2.5 to 3 hours. Now, that is easier said than done. And I'll take you through what happened in the community. Wow. Okay. So this is a simple essay topic, which is, and I'll tell you how from this fatal 5, I came to the fatal 5. So to give you a long story short, I read through an essay paper. I only read through the introduction, not even the full paper. So the introduction, great English, great sentences. In fact, the last phrase of this essay topic, which is education is what remains after one has forgotten what one has learned in school. The last, it's an introduction on Gandhiji, that he got thrown off the train, and he didn't, even though he was a lawyer, he couldn't do much there, except when he came back to India and did a lot of chintan and manthan. And finally, the legal system, the legal learning made him a lawyer, but the education that remained after forgetting the learning to school made him Mahatma. Now this sounds amazing. This phrase sounds like great rhetoric, and this is the reason why you will get average marks for this. There's nothing wrong in the sentence construction. The paragraphs, they flow easily. In fact, the writing is legible, English is good, vocab is good, and these are great rhetorics. These are great conclusion for an intro. The great handoff, I would say, a good handoff line for the introduction. But this is not what the demand of the essay was. And the moment you screw up the demand in the introduction itself, just because it sounds near about right, you take a different tour in your essay. And when this happened, and the next few slides will be about what happened when I shared this essay in the group, and I asked you guys, especially those who are from the Letter and Spirit, I asked you guys what could be alt introductions, and I gave you a few of my suggestions. When that happened, then I went to the Smash Mains team, which takes care of the GS papers 1, 2, 3, 4, and I asked, give me 2 things. Give me one, what are the directives you give to your team, the review team, basis which they check and give micro marks on the attempts of every GS question. And GS questions are what, 150 to 50 marks, which is roughly equivalent to this much, in fact even less, roughly equivalent to this much page space. Half of your GS answer comes in the the first page. So I just wanted to know kitna barik, कितना subtle, कितना nuanced, analytically rigor के साथ हम check करते हैं, because that's what I want to reflect even in the numeric system, the marking scheme in the essay. And that's when I got to know about the Fatal Five, which, honest to God, I don't know how many of you guys are preparing wherever you're preparing for, and I hope your teachers and your mentors are in the right mind, have the right wisdom. But if you're not aware of Fatal Five, it's not a jumla. And I know a lot of people hate frameworks like a plague, but it's something that's so simple, yet you will miss out on, even in the best answer that you write, you might miss out on a few of these Fatal Fives and get less marks than what you probably deserve. And we'll take that with like 20 examples, okay, so that there's nothing which is left to chance. So in this life, if you can stay with me for now, 1 hour from now, I'll take you through most practical answers attempted by people, and I'll tell you where they went wrong, where they almost were right and then they went wrong. And so then you will understand what you don't have to do. Now the caveat here is this: you would know to the bones that Fatal Five is important. And that would, there are two caveats, huh? You'll know to the bones, to your bones, that Fatal Five is important, and that to do that consistently in GS requires a lot of dedicated effort, a lot of mentoring intervention, so that you're on the right track till the exam. Second, if a GS paper where directive is explicitly given demands this much rigor, then come on, I mean, it makes sense that a simple one-line essay question, which is education is what remains after one has forgotten what one has learned, it is bound to extract its own pound of flesh from you, right? It's bound, it's supposed to, because it's reflective, because it's analytical, it's supposed to make sure that you delve in all the tensions that surround this particular theme, and you write your essay doing full justice to that essay and the theme. Whoever out here is studying from people or places who just believe in just filling the paper with some gibberish and some noise and some examples, please make a U-turn now or you'll waste your attempt, and I'm not kidding. Anyway, with that as the anchor, and we'll cover everything, this is what happens when you write something like this, which is a great example, just not suited for this, right? So Gandhi example, which is given here, basically is suited for the tension, which is where moral courage under crisis. It's suited for this micro theme of essay, that if you have crisis, do you run, do you compromise on your principles, or do you figure out your own moral courage? Because this is the only time when courage needs to be shown. Hota hai na, if you can't, there's a very famous book, I think by Hilary Mantel, Wolf Hall, and I think I'm remembering the line right. If you don't have the courage to speak and you're at your beheading, where else would you have it? Something to that account. So when you're at your lowest point, when you see something, some injustice so flagrant, and if then you cower down, if you back off, what's the point of having any courage at all? Anytime else that you talk about big things, it's just armchair philosophy, right? So we know this example beautifully suited for that. The essay, however, I hope all of you understand, वो नहीं demand कर रहा है ये वाला. Essay demands the tensions as form versus residue. What is designed to stay versus what actually stays. In a traditional school, your curriculum, your tangible things, your scores, your marks, everything which you read in terms of books and classes, they ideally are supposed to, or we think, are designed to stay. You're supposed to remember all those things. But what stays actually is the moral, the character. How many of you guys have seen this movie, Scent of the Woman? Al Pacino classic. Is there anyone who has seen, or if not seen the full movie, then have you heard that monologue with Al Pacino has when he goes to the Baird school and he's defending a kid? And Pacino, by the way, is a retired military and blind at that. Anyone? Yes? No? Guys, are you there? No one has seen this movie. Okay, awesome, Rakshit. If you guys have not seen this movie, do yourself a favor. Just Google up Scent of the Woman. I think Scent of a Woman or Scent of the Woman, Al Pacino speech. Just watch it. Probably the best 10 minutes of your life for today, at least, at the very least. You will see there that what Pacino says, that what schools should stand for are these other virtues, all the other virtues, which you should imbibe in one way or the other. And those are the real virtues that should stay not the technical knowledge, not the tangible stuff, not your marks, not your degree, none of those. Those are incidental learnings, by the way, right? So when you talk about what should stay, means what should a leader imbibe, right? So education is what remains after one has forgotten what is learned in school. Education to help in life, skills to help in life. I'm assuming that you're going to be bureaucrat or big leader in your own field, are those virtues that you should remember. Now, why do you remember and how do you remember and what is this tension is what you have to explore in this essay. This intro doesn't make sense. Okay, we move forward and we realize that, so I mean, it was open up for people to comment, right? And one of the comment was Kabir's comment that Kabir never went to school. But now you see PhDs doing their whole thesis on what Kabir said, which apparently was illegible and what we call as ulat bansi in Hindi. Kabir ki jo dohe hote hain, they're like very paradoxical in their making, right? And now we see PhDs from the best universities and schools, they spend their 3 to 5 years, whatever, trying to understand the mind of Kabir, right? So great contrast shown that Kabir, even though he didn't even go to the school, but the kind of wisdom he marshaled through the text he wrote and etc., is now defining the curriculum. Great stuff. And that would have been a great introduction to this kind of essay. Pause at this point here and just try to understand that even though this is a great piece of writing, this doesn't fit. This doesn't fit because it lacks that analytical rigor where you decode the topic wrong. Now, I mean, because I read the whole essay of this person who sent, and the essay is nice. Like I said, language is good, construction is good, flow is better. The reason why these mistakes happen is because you don't push yourself hard enough. And you think, and it's the worst mistake you can do, that essays are something you can just do post prelims. That essays are something which you'll just do in the last 10 days. You can do that if you've been a really good student and a good reader in your college life. If not, unless you're an exceptionally lucky person that year, unless कुंडली में कुछ लिखवा के आए होगी सूर्य बिल्कुल बैठा ही हुआ है, I don't know, first house, whichever house grants you the career, and if you believe in such things, fail होगे एकदम बेतहाशा fail होगे, ठीक है? And I'm not saying this as a taunt. I have checked essay papers of in-service IPS officers who are this close to getting an IS rank, and they just decode the whole topic wrong. Abhi to we haven't even talked about theme and demand and the tasks and the tensions in this essay. They just get introduction wrong because they're so eager to jump on and give you an example. Now take this and let's move forward. Okay. So isko chhodte hain. This is my conclusion, something which I gave. If you do it right, then you can talk about Gandhi, Tagore and Ambedkar, the troika in one single way. And then you can talk about that these are the three most educated men of this country. And at some point, they remembered what the education was for rather than what specifically it was for. So in their own ways, they rebelled against whichever authority they had to rebel, right? They forgot the do's and don'ts, the ways to rebel, etc., etc. They went creative because they realized that whatever education, schooling, basic gyan was given to them is kind of keeping them enslaved with the wisdom which has lost its timelessness. And so that wisdom needs to be challenged. And then they internalize that thing and they figured out ways to challenge that. I guess the best comment in this was by an anonymous guy called Walter White. And this is beautiful. Same essay topic. And now see, Rabindranath Tagore often warned against turning schools into factory crisps, which manufacture uniform minds fed on dry info. किसी को अगर Pink Floyd का गाना आता है याद, we don't need to education, so you can actually use some pop culture reference if you want to. But understand that if you know that that statement which was the essay topic was given by Einstein, and in a way Einstein is saying something which is often quoted across literatures, across religions and spiritual traditions, which is Savidya ya vimuktaye, which is that is the only vidya or that is the only knowledge worth pursuing which liberates you. Liberates you from what? Liberates you from your own limited ideas, your own limited biases, your own limited walls, your own limited thinking, your rigidity of thought. That, guys, is how you need to decode an essay and think analytically. Now, because we were not there, that made me think that agar kisi ko means, if you have to just even write your GS mains answer, which is just what, 250 words, 150 words, how can you be damn good at that? For that, Civilsdaily has a framework, Fatal 5, which I honestly, despite being the co-founder and CEO. I wasn't aware of that. I just knew what Fatal 5 is. I didn't know how deep and micro that thing goes. Now I know. And if you're here and if you can reshare this video and could just listen to me, this is how deep it gets. On the surface, this appears very simple. On the surface, Fatal 5 is just these 5 things. Okay, you have introduction, you have body structuring, you have point structuring, Fatal 3, you have conclusion, Fatal 4, and then Fatal 5, F5 is basically just the overall aesthetics of the answer. Now your intro, which should be not more than 50 to 70 words, should ideally be something which either gives you the premise or the context of that question and the backdrop of why that question is being asked. Ya fir it should be a quote based intro which brings out a relevant quote to that question in the paper, or it should be a database intro if you're reading your economic survey. If you're reading PIB now is very important, so this year we should give extra focus to PIB, or it should be a definition based introduction in cases where it's a very technical topic like science and tech. Now if the question is around MSP, yeah, basic things which everyone knows, do not go and define MSP there. You would not attract marks. But if the question is around something in science and tech, some very specific technology, nano, AI related stuff, then it's better that you have traditional definitions put out there. अब intro में ही examples देखते हैं, ठीक है? Typical problems which people have in their intro are either the intro doesn't match the theme of the question. In Smash Means, we have this very simple point that a question has a theme and explicit and implicit demands. That's the first thing you need to understand when you read a question. And it gets trickier when you're reading a GS question because it's filled with a lot of keywords. So there are a lot of jargons and you need to be able to parse through the whole cloud of words to figure out what is it it's actually asking. Either your intro doesn't match the theme of the question, or it's just basically a quick rephrasing of the question and you're trying to act smart that this will get you marks. It will not. Or too long, या फिर it's just a definition without a context. Definition, like I said, you should use only when it's very technical a question. अब ये question देखो. In an era of social media trials, and I hope you guys are okay with me taking a question in deep, right? In an era of social media trials and viral misinformation, defamation law assumes a new significance. Discuss whether decriminalizing defamation could strike a fair balance between protecting reputation and preserving freedom of speech. Very voluble question, right? बहुत heavily worded question hai. The only way you can attempt that is just sit with it for a moment. Sit with it. Make sure you don't fall for things like assumes new significance. May you start listing the significance of social media trial or defamation law. That's not what the question is asking. The question is saying that पहले भी चल रहा था ये, but now with defamation law was existing before also, but now with these two things happening, there is a newfound significance of this defamation law, meaning some things either have been added or have been relooked or are hotly debated now. Okay, now you have to discuss that debate which would be under the discuss directive, whether that debate which is about decriminalizing defamation, whether it can strike a fair balance between protecting the reputation and preserving the freedom of speech. You understand the tension in this question? This is a GS2 question. Do you understand the embedded tension? जो मैं ऐसे में I was trying to teach you. You will find such questions in your papers wherever there is a philosophical undercurrent. So polity paper where laws are made, where new legislations are passed, they have a philosophical basis for whatever we are doing as a country. And when something has a philosophical basis, there'll always be points towards the thesis, points towards the antithesis. The directive obviously is discuss whether, which basically means you have to go and see both sides of the coin. And now see this introduction. Freedom of speech is a fundamental right under Article 19 of the Constitution, and there is a very specific brackets 1, brackets A, and right to reputation under Article 21 of the Constitution, whatever. You won't get marks for this. Even if after this you do write some good stuff, your F1 marks will be deducted. This is the reason why some of you will score half a mark, 1 mark extra in every question, and some of you will not even have this in your mind. I don't know how many of you guys have practiced answer writing, and I don't know how many of you guys have gotten detailed like alt intros. Like where is it gone wrong, and not just hey this is wrong, but what can be done better. So now with that in mind, when you go and you see another attempt, right, just to compare this thing, the increase in scale and scope of social media trial and viral misinformation has led to a debate between practice protecting reputation and preserving freedom of speech. Do you see that this is just a rephrasing? This is the trick engineers, at least I know, used to do in colleges, right? When you would not know how a semiconductor question can be solved, we'll just draw the diagram back again. Okay, that's it. Hoping we'll get at least 1 mark or 2 mark. Doesn't happen like that in UPSC. This is the same reproduction, same rephrasing of the same question. Mat karo. And I've seen people do that. Heck, we've seen the essays also go wrong when we do the similar introduction. What should actually be coming here in this 50 to 70 words should just be this: defamation involves false statements harming a person's reputation, highlighting the growing tension between free expression, Article 19, and right to reputation, Article 21. And then add one case which is in context. That would be like your X factor on the introduction. Okay, and that's it. Your introduction is done. If you don't do that, your fatal one mistake will, incur you losses. So we have to fix every module of whatever it is we are doing. I hope I am making sense of the people who are still on the live. And I'm going at the okay pace, you can follow me. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop in. Another question, right? Intro doesn't match the theme of the question. Digital transformation in judiciary has potential to enhance efficiency, transparency, and access to justice. Yet concerns remain about inclusivity and institutional readiness. Discuss. Discuss matlab both sides. Now, read the question. Read the amazing quote, right, by Lord Byron. बहुत सारे लोग among us will just remember a quote, and we'll only remember a handful of quotes, right, on the day we write the exam. So it's kind of almost like a dopamine kick if we just see some common keywords and we just land a quote. This quote, by the way, can work in the conclusion. Okay, we'll see this whole attempt of the question as well, but it will not work in introduction, because introduction is about digital transformation and efficiency, transparency, and access to justice. It is not an abstract question on generally a justice. And this quote is: when the light of the justice darkens, no one knows the extent of darkness. Beautiful rhetoric, does not fit here. And someone has to tell you that this will not get you the right amount of marks, which you can. Someone who remembers the quote can actually also write a good intro, but wo kick hoti hai na, and you will just end up writing that and you would not get the marks. Don't do that. The right introduction would be: digital transformation of judiciary utilizes technology in justice delivery as demonstrated by Swapnil Tripathi case through the live streaming of court proceedings. So we have to be exact. This is the context. You remember I told you, right? Your introduction would be good best if it can just establish a context of the times that you are living in. If you can do that, nothing better than that. If you can't do that, then write a quote-based intro, but make sure that the quote sticks to the question. Because if the quote strays away, then don't assume that the guy is just going to be enamored by your, your remembrance or, your replication of quote. Okay. Ecstatic Monk says, when you find a good intro, look for a better one. Yeah, great way. Or you have a database intro. Mostly database intros are either available for polity or economics or what else. Where else can you use database introductions? You guys have written some mocks, yes. Where else have you written introduction where you've given data? Eco and polity ko chhod ke. Nowhere. You guys have not written any mocks. People out here, how many of you are going to write the exam in 2026, hopefully? Anyone who's expecting to write? No one. Is there anyone from 2027 who's going to attempt in 27? Wow. You have a great engaging crowd then. Rakshit, ecstatic. 27, I'm assuming. Rest of you guys, You're in autopilot mode. Okay, we go back now. This is it. Okay. Now, some of your introduction, and this happens more often than you would know, are very verbose. They just run along. Discuss how globalization has transformed cultural practices and consumption patterns in Indian society. What concerns does this raise regarding preservation of indigenous identities? You see, you have kind of rephrased in the first line. Then conspicuous consumption theory and Bourdieu idea of cultural capital in India, rapid urbanization. Kuch bhi nahi hai. You've just gone on and on in writing the introduction so big because that is the blurb which you remember on globalization from your recent notes. So don't do that. These will also, this is like the whole answer. These will also screw up both the presentation and also the hierarchy of thought that you need to mention. These are I mean, we're just in introduction, right? We're in F1. They are these small things that you need to master. Very small things that you need to master. And to just master them, it appears right now it's very difficult, but trust me, we get this done in your third paper. By the time you write third mains paper, third FLT with us in the smash means you are done with F5. At least in theory and practice, you would have seen one round of a rigorous check and a rigorous mentor sitting to ensure that your F5s are covered. इसके बाद F6 और F7 होता है, which are actually positive enrichment points, which you keep doing as you grow, as you come closer to the exam. Again, intro doesn't match the theme of the question. Mention the constitutional provision that promotes secularism in India. How effective have they been in practice? Some among you would write this intro. India is not just a country, but an idea, a pluralistic idea, according to Shashi Tharoor. This principle is also seen in India's constitution and commitment towards secularism. But what are the constitution provision? वो नहीं पता. Because if you don't write that in the introduction, if you just want to write about Shashi Tharoor and India ke purane din, then what will happen is this answer. How effective have they been in practice? Which basically means you have to come out with a debate, pros and cons and old ideas versus new ideas. You will miss out on the white space and you'll not be able to attempt that properly. That is the problem with you not sticking to the word limit and you're not sticking to the right kind of intro, which, let me, at the risk of being a broken record, these are, take a screenshot. This is it. Now, how do you make sure that your intros land properly every time you see a question? And that's an interesting thing because that's what you need to practice. X Factor notes which we release, which are now released in a revised edition. Like I think in a week's time, you'll get all the X Factor notes revised and updated as per 2026 syllabus. There, we would give you these kind of introductions, premise, context. Basically, this would be covered under the section of modern times and quote-based introductions. Basically, quotes will be given to you. Now, it's up to you to remember the right keyword according to which this quote makes sense. Data is also given to you. These are all basically X factors. X factor का मतलब होता है we understand that your theory is done, your basic understanding is cool, and now I'm going to give you what other people call value enrichment points. I'm just going to give you things which you can just directly plug and play. So even in your introduction, itni magajmari hoti hai. Now, had this been a JEE paper, it would have been relatively easy because a question can at least or at most be solved by 3 ways. So you might have a simpler way and I might have a longer way, but still we'll arrive at one answer and that one answer will fetch us completely full marks. The problem with subjective papers like UPSC is that if you are not putting this much rigor, but your neighbor or a veteran or a rank holder who's going to improve his rank either this year or next, he or she is going to put this much effort, they will get extra marks. Mains preparation is basically linear or or exponential if you're very thorough or if you're very committed. Mains preparation almost always never goes down. You will never, until and unless you are so bad or you got lucky the first time, you'll rarely see people dropping down on their mains unless they do something remarkably stupid. Otherwise, mains preparation, if done this rigorously, will only add and give you more marks, 20 marks each paper, 10 marks each paper. Everyone wants to crack into that 450 bracket in the GS mains, right? That's what your aim should also be. Now F1, I think we've had enough of F1. F2 is now about body issues. Okay, this is the fatal mistake too. In F2 में typical problems आती हैं. A, coverage of both implicit and explicit demands. B, subheadings that actually do not correspond to the demand. Okay, this is abstract. To help you understand F2 better, I'll have to take you to F0. This is F0. By this time you would think कि इससे better तो था consulting में career बना लेते. UPSC मेंस निकालने में इतने frameworks निकल रहे हैं. And I am not making this up. Do you feel like I'm force feeding you something? I was as flabbergasted as probably some of you are, just to spend this much time on F1. I have not even started F2. And to tell you F2, I have to tell you behind the scenes F0. Okay. How many of you guys are here part of the Smash ecosystem and have seen something similar discussed with your mentor? कितने लोग पहली बार ये सुन रहे हैं? इतना सारा मगजमारी just to get intro right, then to get on with the body, and then maybe conclusion, and then the overall aesthetics. Some of you have stayed PCS mains in few days. How many of you have ever gone through such nitty-gritties in your answer writing? Because I find this to be benchmark baseline, but I find only rankers are able to talk like this, and I see that in their copies. You know what you should do? You should go and look at rankers copies on the final attempt and the last papers, among the last papers that they wrote, not the first papers. Look at Shakti Dubey's copy, okay, ethics copy dekhna, and you'll see how introductions, if they're code based, are bang on. If they're not, there's no need, that she's not given extra stuff. Look at everyone and then see critically, because your time is of essence. You should only study, learn, and execute what's going to get you extra marks, nothing else. Yeah, this requires more practice, correct, and that is why it's important. Rakshit, okay, fair enough. Now this is what we give to our paper checking folks, people who kind of mark your copies and who review the checking. Okay, I'm just kind of giving you the behind the scenes right now, which ideally you're not supposed to know, but for us to understand, if you have not committed any fatal 2 errors, this is what is given to the copy checkers. Okay, so theme for this question is defamation cross conflict between FRs. Like, you understand, all the good questions, all the questions which are critically analyzed, evaluate, all of them will have an inherent tensions. These are the tensions which get exaggerated and they get exacerbated in the essays, but regardless, iski theme ye hai, demand 1, which is an implicit demand, which is challenges in social media era for defamation law, which is this line. Okay, that it assumes a new significance. That's an implicit demand. They haven't asked a question on this, they've just put that line and dropped it. Okay, so if you want to score extra marks, you will also go for the implicit demand. Explicit demand, favor of decriminalizing defamation. Explicit demand 2, argument against decriminalization. Explicit demand 3, necessary reforms to strike balance. And then you have conclusion. Most of you who like good in your mains preparation will be able to do these explicit demands better. You might have fodder for the implicit also, but you might not realize that there's an implicit demand which you need to address. Or if you do realize, you might have gone on your introduction way too much and ki paper mein jagah hi nahi bachi. Kyunki it's very important that you write explicit first, right? Implicit you can tackle somewhere in between. Ab dekho, with that, let's get the same question. This is the introduction. The increase in scale and scope of social media trial and viral information has led to the debate between protecting reputation and preserving freedom of speech. Dikh raha hai, this introduction will fetch you no marks. I mean, you guys agree with me that this introduction is like a waste of words? Yes, Shubham sir, Arvind sir, anyone who is part of this Smash Means ecosystem on the mentoring side, and if you're attending Shubham's PYQ classes which are running on right now, Smash PYQs, you will see this happening daily. But the reason why I'm doing this live is because if you don't have this level of thinking in your GS paper, I mean, automatically assume what you're going to do in your essay and ethics. That you'll assume that it's an easier paper. You'll assume that you can even do basic tension analysis, basic tasks, and you'll get less marks in what probably you can earn if you just give it a bit more thought. Anyway, so you see that subheadings, introduction to kharab hai hi hai, matlab underrepresented hai. Subheadings that actually don't respond to the demand, you can read this. New significance of defamation law in the era of social media. It's not asked. Okay. You see these subheadings, you can take a screenshot or you can watch this video. You'll realize that this is not what those implicit and explicit demands were. आगे चलते हैं. This though the questions aesthetics are beyond the sensibilities. But look at this one. Digital transformation in the judiciary has the potential to enhance efficiency, transparency, and access to justice, yet concerns remain about inclusivity and institutional readiness. Theme is digital transformation in judiciary. Very simple to identify. Okay. Demand one, which is an implicit demand because this is in the first sentence. Keep what are the potential to enhance efficiency, transparency, and access to justice. So three things. You should be writing points under these three heads, which are very simply put out there. Then demand two, which is also implicit, concerns about inclusivity and institutional readiness. Demand three, which is explicit demand, is what's the way forward. Now, this is not a good answer. Compare this answer with the answer we saw when we were discussing introduction. Even though this quote doesn't fit the bill right now, but this person has attempted the rest of the body very beautifully. So all the keywords have been given due paper space and they've been given 2 points each. In fact, if you see a little better, those points also are substantiated properly, right? So they're examples, there's a different dimension opened up. Due justice has been done to the body of the question, and you might not get marks for the F1, but you will get marks for the F2. This is how rigorous your mains answer writing has to be, and this has to become like your second default. Again, India's neighborhood is witnessing a convergence of political instability. Falana. Just read the F0 and you might get these in your model answers, and then try to see how people are attempting. India's neighborhood is witnessing a convergence of political instability, economic fragility, and external interference. Okay, 3 words are implicit demands. They all have to be dealt with properly, and they have not. And this is just 150 word question, and this has not been done right. So you will not get again marks in what you should be getting. F2 ho gaya. Let's skip this question. F3, body issues. Different kind of body issues. One which is most important, which is जैसे हम essays में लिखते हैं ना, when we write essays, and let's say we are able to break the tension into thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, and within thesis we pick up a few dimension, right? Let's say it's the question around जो अभी question था कि a question, there was a essay question that the purpose of school is to convert mirrors into windows. This was one of the essay question. So let's say you agree with this topic. Then you think of different dimensions in which this is valid. Within those dimensions, you give an argument. Within those arguments, you substantiate it with an example. Now your argument has to be cogent. Itna sab hum karte the na essay wale mein. Same thing at a much lower level is what's needed in the mains body. Lack of multidimensionality of points is one issue. No DAE approach is even a bigger cardinal sin. Okay, and no analysis or enrichment. 1 and 3, especially 3 is an X factor point. 2 is like a cardinal sin. 1 is an add-on. Now look at this. This is the question. The deputy speaker is not a mere substitute of speaker, but plays an indispensable role in the continuity of legislative work. Now this is the question, and we're going to discuss just the body part of it. Ab dekho. Your body is supposed to answer this part. The deputy speaker is not a mere substitute of the speaker. And you made the heading, deputy speaker is not merely a substitute of the speaker, but look at the points. Your points are second in command presiding officer of Lok Sabha. This is a deputy. This is the act which you do when the speaker is not there. Automatically becomes chairperson of the parliamentary committee in which he or she is a member. That is a substitute feature. So when you don't think critically and you use just random dimensions, you're basically countering your own heading. This is the heading, but the points are all anti-heading, right? Now you have filled in the paper, your writing is amazing. In fact, the whole answer is aesthetic. But what's the point? You've just missed the complete DAE structure of this. Okay? You won't get marks for this. But this happens more often than not. So whatever answers you write, in wherever you're writing a mock, please sit down with your mentor. Or if you don't have time to sit down with your mentor, or if that is not possible in the module that you've bought, just go through the model answers. See if the consistency of thought, if the rigor of execution is maintained, at least in the model answers. The model answers, ideally speaking, should be explanatory. The model answers, ideally speaking, in a perfect world, should tell you, hey, if you're thinking like this, then it's wrong. If you're thinking like this and you want this point to be made, these are possible 3-4 examples that you can put forth. What is it that you need to do to get the maximum marks in this question? The model answers in the past used to be like 20 points written. And the thing given to you was इनमें से कुछ भी याद रख लो, पेपर में लिख के आ जाना, नंबर मिल जाएंगे. नहीं मिलते ऐसे नंबर. Again, diaspora diplomacy has emerged as a vital component of India's foreign policy architecture. Now, just look at this. And I think there's a, okay, यही point है. ठीक है, Indian diaspora influencing relations with major power. This is where we're bringing in every point in a different dimension. This is where DAE is actually represented. There is a dimension, argument इतना sharp नहीं है, but example हर एक में. ठीक है, and for what? For 150 words, that's more than what you can do. And this has to become like your, you know, your like split second reaction to any question which comes if your theory is done well. Fourth is a simple one. Fourth is one where your conclusion has to be right. And conclusion का बस एक ही, ये तो obviously आप नहीं करोगे, but conclusion में कुछ एक ही nuance है that you need to remember, that your conclusion has to be balanced. If you can give a code-based conclusion, nothing like it, you'll get extra marks. And slightly leave the conclusion on a positive outlook. Okay, so that example on the judiciary and the digitization of judiciary, that Lord Byron example, if you would have put that, if that person would have put that in the conclusion, they would have gotten more marks. Guys, am I making sense? This is fatal 4 done. Can anyone write it out on the chat? Anyone who believes in making notes? Fatal 1 was about introduction. Fatal 2 and 3 are essentially about your body. Fatal 4 is about conclusion. Fatal 5 is about the general aesthetic of your answer. Fatal 5 is where your representation makes you get more points, right? So, जैसे इस साल हड़प्पा का question आया था. Lot of people ended up just making, there was a question on GS1, right? हड़प्पा. A lot of people just ended up making a map of history, a map of India of that era, and कि हड़प्पा यहाँ पे, मोहनजोदड़ो यहाँ पे. ये नहीं पूछा था यार. They asked you how the place, the architecture used to look like. It would be much better if you make a relevant diagram. That is where fatal 5 avoid कर जाते हो आप. The 5th fatal mistake तुम avoid कर दो. So look at something like this. These are picked up from the copies of the rankers. This is where they minimize on their footprint and they give more information than otherwise they would not have been able to give if they were to write full sentences. This is where you gain more marks, right? You see, small things that you do right will earn you more marks than you can imagine. And if you don't do them right, and let's say if you get the introduction wrong, and if the guys, we know all the teachers, they're irrational people. In fact, all humans are irrational. उसका मूड चिटक गया अगर, तो वो तुम्हारे बाकी का पेपर उस चिटके हुए मूड से देखेगा. ठीक है, and you wouldn't want that because you might have given really good points in the body or conclusion, right? But your introduction failed. So you have time right now. Make sure you practice things to the T. Make sure that the idea that, hey, I understand this in theory, but I just don't implement it because I think I'll be able to do this on the D-Day. वो नहीं होता है. I wish this exam were also like a rocket science exam, where if you know something in theory and they're just objective answers, you will just solve the numerical and get the right answer. This is not UPSC mains. UPSC mains demand that you're consistent with your approach, your attempt types. You make sure you leave nothing on the table for the examiner to, check and not reward you marks. You do everything by the books and hope that, that day luck shines right. Okay. That's it. Those are the fatal 5 things. That's why I wanted to take this live. I'm kind of thankful that you came on such a short notice. This was an unplanned event. Fatal 6 and fatal 7 we'll discuss later. But fatal 5 for GS is absolutely mandatory. And while we are here, just see that if GS paper demand this much of rigor from you, that basic essay question which got asked in the community today, that would basically demand that you figure out that question in good detail and figure out what are the tensions involved. I cannot possibly sway away. I will not go behind. But that's what's needed. So thank you for staying this long. Fatal 5 karo dang se. If you have any problem, if you have anything, you can ask us. come and see to us in the office, and we'll just sit and bring some papers, bring some of your notes, okay, so that we look at what you've written and we are able to accordingly guide you. Take care. Bye.